All right, so what we're going to be discussing here is the body's position that we get to the moment our front foot gets into the ground for the very first time. And this moment in time is called our foot strike. So we are going to be talking about the moment when, boom, those feet get into the ground for the very first time. And again, that's called our foot strike position. At foot strike, we want to be looking at our body in two halves. Our upper half and our lower half. At foot strike, we want our lower half to have rotated forward towards our target. And a useful thing to look at to know if we've been able to do that is the belt buckle. And is that belt buckle facing the target? If the belt buckle is facing the target, it's a pretty good chance that we have successfully rotated both the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip. When we're able to rotate the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip, as our front foot is getting into that foot strike position, we will successfully be able to get our belt buckle driving towards the target. If we specifically take a look at just the back foot of these four guys, let's watch as they are rotating that back leg, how that back foot is rotating. At this point in time, all four guys still have their entire foot flat onto the ground, and then they begin to rotate through or over top of their big toe. Their foot kind of rolls, folds over, or drives forward. And as the foot does that motion, we now shift our view to the back knee and know as the foot is rolling over the big toe, that the back knee is also rotating forward. And how those two things, the back foot and the back knee, are working together. We can also see that as we go to drive and rotate that back foot and back knee, how they do that while they gain ground down the mound and towards their catcher. So this is the difference between rotating our bodies forward, or a word for that is driving ourselves forward, versus just rotating in place. If we were just rotating in place, our bodies would not be able to gain this ground down the mound. Our bodies wouldn't be able to accelerate our power and energy down the mound. And we can then look and see that the foot has the toe, and then the heel is in front of the toe, meaning we have rotated forward. We then go to the upper body, the upper halves, from the waist up, and we want to separate that upper body from the lower body. We want the direction that our hips are facing, which is to the target, to be separate from the direction our shoulders are facing. So we notice we can see the Giants, the Padres, the Pirates, and his number. We can see the Phillies, and we can see the Brewers or Milwaukee. I'm not sure what they have displayed on their jerseys there. So the direction of their lower bodies is to the target, and the direction of their shoulders is still facing, for these right-handers, towards third base, or the direction they have been the entire time. So we rotate the lower body first, then we get into foot strike, then we rotate our upper body second. And the more that we can get those lower bodies to fully rotate to the target by the time that front foot hits the ground, and we've also been able to keep that upper body from rotating and staying back, we will have created as much upper lower half separation or hip shoulder separation as possible. And the more hip shoulder separation or upper lower half separation we can create, the more power we're going to be able to produce, and the amount of stress that's put on our arm is going to be reduced. What we're also going to notice is that almost regardless of your arm slot, if we have a true 3/4, low 3/4, high 3/4, an over-the-top arm slot, or anything in between those, we're always going to find ourselves in a relatively 90 degree angle, meaning from our elbow across to our other shoulder, we want to think is nice and even. 90 degrees in that armpit. We also want to think 90 degrees in that elbow. We want this type of arm position, that 90-90, we'll call it, at the moment of foot strike. When our arm has loaded up to this position here, at the moment of foot strike, and the upper body has not rotated yet, our body's rotation will accelerate the throw forward. If the arm is not in this 90-90 position, the body's rotation forward is going to be less than ideal and in sync with how the arm will flow after the body goes. So we're looking for this 90-90-ish position in that throwing arm at foot strike. What we can also notice at foot strike is, where is this glove at? It's in front of the body by the rib cage. We're not letting it, if we're thinking here's some water, don't drown the glove. Don't let your glove get wet. Don't drown that glove. This one right here is a little too high. Should be more towards the belt. Okay. When the glove gets finished into the body like this, it's able to help keep this front shoulder in line, meaning it's not going to open up early. Because if that front shoulder starts to open up early, that's going to start to pull the back shoulder forward early. And now we would not have separated our upper and lower halves as much, because the angle of the shoulders would begin to rotate forward, which would be more matching the angle of the hips. The final thing we're going to look at is this front leg. We see all these guys have different degrees of bend in their front legs. But what we're going to notice is that as the upper body now rotates to throw, we need to make our front leg become a firm fixture of which we can rotate around. So thinking about this front leg here turning into a flagpole. My flagpole is always going to be strongest if it's straight. Or at least I can't have my flagpole move forward while my body is trying to rotate forward. So we'll redraw these little outlines here, and we will have these guys. Oh man, that's all right. It's going to get back to it anyway. Boom. And now we'll watch as they go to throw. How that leg is locking out, stiffening up, straightening out. So that now that leg is here. Now that leg is here. Now that leg is here and here. From the bend, straightening it out. And what we can notice is as that leg locks out, stiffens up, straightens out, becomes that firm flagpole, notice how that upper body is able to catapult itself out in front and down more. Able to get out in front more. Out in front more. So that way, if we look, we can't get everyone exactly at release, but ball just out, ball just out, ball is coming out, ball is slightly a little bit more out than the bottom two. But we're able to look at this angle of the chin to the waist, back out to the front foot, boom, boom, boom. Just how out in front of themselves they're getting. And that's because of that front leg's ability to lock out. So we can see that they're starting, boom, boom, there, and there. So now it's not just the arm throwing the ball down. It's the body throwing the ball down. It's the body going down with the throw. Body accelerating down. And as the body's accelerating down, the lower half is firming up. So that way, as I need to finish all this violent rotation, I have the ability to do that around that firm front leg. I have that ability to rotate around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my back leg around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my hips around. I can finish all that violent rotation out of my back shoulder around. Giving my arm plenty of time to slow down and giving the back muscles, my scapular muscles, all the time they need to activate and slow down that rapidly accelerating arm. All right, we're going to be discussing the mechanics from a front view, and we're just going to concern ourselves with our path or the flow down the mound. So we already got these videos to the top of these guys' leg lifts. Obviously, every pitcher comes down the mound at different rates, different speeds. However, to make these guys flow together, I have changed up their speeds to fit. So what we're going to see is that we got Jerry Jones over here getting that front leg fully extended and really sitting into his delivery. We got Greinke, who's got his knee, which is going to be further back towards second base than his foot is. He's really taking this front knee and kind of curling it back so that his front hip stays closed. And Kirby is going like Jones here with his front leg, but he's keeping it in a more bent position rather than kicking it straight out like Jones. But what we do notice is no matter how these guys load into their back hips, getting down into their legs, engaging their lower halves, what do we notice? We notice where the glove is going. And that's to help them be able to see over their front shoulder. They want to be looking down the barrel of their shoulder, because the longer we can be looking here over this shoulder as we proceed down the mound. Obviously, we've gotten back to center, but look, we're still looking right over that shoulder. Still looking right over that shoulder. Still looking right over that front shoulder. The longer we can do that into our moment of foot strike, bam, bam, we can see front shoulder, and our head is still trying to fight to keep that our front shoulder is still fighting to stay above our chin. The front shoulder is still fighting to stay in above the chin. The front shoulder is still fighting to stay in above the chin. And when we do that, we can see that the back hip now has been able to come through, exposing the belt buckle to the batter, to our catcher, but preventing, because that front shoulder's fought to stay in so that we continue to look over it. Look what that's done with our chest. It's kept it squared up, squared up, squared up, as that lower half has been able to fire, and there lies our upper lower half separation that we're trying to achieve. And now here comes the most important part. Getting into this position is key for both our power production, our ability to throw the baseball with our body, thus reducing the amount of stress that's going on through our arm during that delivery, and helping ensure, this wasn't the straightest line here, helping ensure our energy continues to flow to the catcher. All right, we can see that head staying there, that head staying there. Kirby's fighting to keep it in there. And you can see he's fighting to keep it in there because it did not go more out there. So we're rotating that back shoulder. We're rotating that back shoulder forward. 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 So that way all of our power can be flung through those fingers, out through that ball, forward. If we watch that again without any interruption. Into foot strike. Out of foot strike. Everything staying in line with our target. And then noticing as they're getting into release, where are those chin and chests going? To the target. To the target. The angle of our trunk, this mass from our shoulders through our waist, our trunk right now is upright. It's above our hips. In relation to the ground, it's in a 90-degree angle. As we get into release, those trunks in relation to the ground are no longer up here trying to throw the baseball. Instead, in relation to the ground, these trunks of these elite throwers of the baseball, both in terms of command, the best to ever do it, in terms of longevity and success, one of the best to do it, and an upcomer with elite velocity and potential to be an all-star. Every one of their trunks at release went from being up here at foot strike to out here at release, bringing that energy down the mound, but most importantly, towards our target. And that's something that we're able to see even easier and more clearly in the side view videos. All right, so if we kind of take this back once more and we see these arm slots, we'd say, boom. Oops, let me draw a better line than that. Right, we're at a high 3/4, 3/4. We are in a same thing, 3/4, high 3/4. Same thing here, right? So these are some of your most common arm slots are the 3/4 to high 3/4 arm slot, and then what we'll look at next here are some guys that are in that lower 3/4 tier. So we'll let we got Luis Hill, Kyle Harrison, and Carl Crawford. All right, so the same thing, moment of that foot strike, we can see that they're still fighting to keep that front shoulder in, keep that front shoulder in, fighting to keep that front shoulder in, and then coming to release and through, we can see how those heads are fighting to stay in. Luis Hill a little bit outside, but we can see through release, bam, it's there, it's there, it's there, it's there. Now it's out, which is no big deal. It's already stable for long enough post-release, bam, that he could do a cartwheel over here if he wanted to after. So fighting to keep that front shoulder in, and by doing that, the shoulders have stayed squared up, and with a good lower half timing and pattern sequencing, we got the back hip to have come forward, the back hip to have come forward, exposing that belt buckle to the batter, creating that upper and lower half separation that we're trying to seek in order to achieve higher velocities and minimize the stress that's put on our arm during these high intense and continuous throws. If we then take these guys into their moment of release, we got that same concept that we did earlier, and we can see here's our low 3/4, even getting closer, some would say, to even true sidearm. We have that low 3/4, and we got that 3/4 to low 3/4. But what we can notice is all the same with those different arm slots, but the most common arm slots in our game. All these guys are fitting the same bill in their own unique ways, but these important key points are all very much getting checked off by each, no matter what. All right, now that you've had the opportunity to learn from those big league examples, the pitching delivery, we now have your video up here. We'll play it 2 times through. First time here, all one motion. Second time, we'll pause it at that moment of foot strike when that front foot hits the ground. And we'll discuss things that we learned with the big leaguers and what we're seeing with you to better diagnose your delivery here. All right, so we'll start with that upper body. And we learned that we want that upper body to stay back and closed at the moment of this front foot getting into the ground. And what we also talked about is we want this throwing arm to be in a 90-90 positioning to be in a healthy spot, and it very much is. We also talked about that chin being over that shoulder with that glove finishing up into our body, which we have. The one thing we are noticing is that we can start to see this throwing arm coming through a little bit. If we watch, as this front foot is getting into the ground, this back elbow is beginning to want to start its throw. Wanting to start its throw. Right as we're nestling that weight into that front leg, it's wanting to start its throw just a little early. So if we're looking to try to gain some velocity here, what we want to think about is having this throwing arm of yours be invisible because it's behind your head and we can't see any of it. If we want to take that even a step further, we could think about seeing the ball behind your back over here on first base side. In the front view big league breakdown, we saw a couple big leaguers that had that ball loaded way back here. So of the upper body's positioning, that's the only thing that we see at this point in time that we could critique or try to work on changing to increase something in your delivery, and that something would be velocity. We work our way to that lower body, and we'll just take a look at that front leg first, and we want to keep it close for as long as we can. Close, which you do. And then, bam, open it at the last possible second. Because late rotation is explosive rotation, and we can use that for power. One thing that we will want to do, again, to help create a little bit more power is the back knees rotation, the back foot's drive, the back hips rotation and drive. You do all of them, but we don't do as much as we could in order to get that power. And if we watch, the knee starts to rotate like it should, and then the foot rotates us forward or drives us away from that pitching rubber by rotating over this big toe here like you do. And when we get 1, 2 going, that helps 3, the hip, really drive forward. And we can see right as that hip is starting to go forward, right as it's starting to go forward, that foot's getting that weight. That front foot is getting the body's weight into it. So if we could get the back foot to fire a little bit sooner, maybe we do that by getting first the back knee to rotate a little bit more aggressively or a little bit sooner. So that way the back foot starts to go a little bit sooner, which would ultimately, what we want to improve here is getting the back hip to rotate and fire just a little bit sooner, helping get that belt buckle, instead of it just being kind of over here, getting it more here, or heck, even over here, or over here. Anything that's just more than what we currently got would be an improvement, which would be helping us get more power, because we would have more separation between those shoulders and hips, because the hips would be more this way. And then if we also paired that with keeping that throwing arm back, now the upper half is back more, and now we've created more separation on 2 planes, the upper half plane and the lower half plane. And that would increase our velocity even more. It would even take stress off our arm even more, because we're now throwing with more kinetic chain, bam, 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 boom, instead of having to kind of force some things along the way. But all in all, there's a lot of good things happening here in your delivery. The other thing that's going to help us throw harder is knowing that at the moment of foot strike, our chest is here. When we get to release, that ball is coming out of your hand here. We're at this angle here, so we've used this to power the throw. We then finish that throw, and we're kind of here. It hasn't really changed all that much. It just has kind of gone forward more, forward more, forward. We got a lot of forward. I want you to think we throw this ball, yes, obviously out in front, but most importantly, we're throwing it down. So I want us to think that we went from here to here. We're throwing this ball down. Let's not just keep this angle and send it forward, but let's instead take this out to this and continue it down so that we're slowing our body down the same way we threw it, which is going to help with our arm's health. But most impactfully, that we're going to notice is that we're not going to have to be running down this mound at the end of the throw. We're going to be able to just continue to finish around ourselves in a more balanced position, which is going to help us be able to react to balls in all directions. Oops, you're the last one. Can't hit play twice. But again, these are just kind of nitpicking things to help you throw harder, because everything else that you do is very well off and where we want it to be at. So at this point in time, let's go chase some velocity, huh?